Welcome to another episode of Homefront. I am Rome, and we are here to make sure that we answer all of those questions that you may have at home, whether it's concerned to your health, your well-being, your lifestyle, whatever it may be. Here at Homefront, we're going to answer all of those questions. And this episode I'm excited for because we are bringing back another guest who has riveted, who has answered so many questions that we had to bring him back another time because we didn't get to answer everything that you all asked. And we are talking about Dr. Sammy. He's here joining us all the way from Tobago. He couldn't be here because of the restrictions, but thank God for technology. He is here with us via Zoom. So Dr. Sammy, thank you for joining us here once again.
Thanks for having me again.
So today we want to ask you something a bit different. We were talking about the elderly when we last spoke, and you gave us all of the different tips in terms of aging healthily. Now we want to touch on the carers of those elderly persons, because I heard the phrase was tossed around in terms of carer fatigue. You could touch a bit on those who are taking care of the elderly and them getting tired of taking care of the elderly. Does that actually happen?
Oh, yes. So, there is a term that is used called the sandwich generation.
The sandwich generation.
Yeah, and that refers to people in their 40s and 50s who are caught between looking after their own children and looking after their aging parents. And they do suffer with fatigue, with burnout. And it's really important for these people to make sure they look after themselves, to care for themselves. You know, you mentioned something to me off air, which I thought was really telling, which is that in our particular setting, some of these people are actually people who left very good jobs in the States or Canada or Europe and come down here to look after their relatives, and they have the added problem that they can feel trapped.
Because I have friends of mine who went through that, and they left their entire life, they dropped their entire lives to come and take care of their parents, and now they don't know what to do. They don't know if they made the right decision, because some of them, their parents actually passed on, and now they are here. They already gave up that life in the US or in Europe, and now they don't know what to do, and they are in a state of depression themselves.
Absolutely.
So what would you advise people in those situations who would have that guilt of not coming home to take care of their parents, or that guilt of, what if I just paid a caretaker to take care of my parents instead of me coming home myself?
So let's look at the carers themselves first and what they can do to care for themselves. I think there are some really simple things, and underlying all of this is making sure that you, the carer, understands that if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after other people. You know the old thing about when you're going on the aeroplane and the safety thing, they say, please put on your own oxygen mask before you put on your child's oxygen mask. Same sort of idea. So a few really simple things. The first thing is to make sure that you have a safety net. Whether that be a close friend or professional help or a professional network that you can turn to when you are really not coping or you're too stressed. And also a group of people who will see before you do that maybe you need a break, maybe you need some help, maybe you need a rest. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to actually schedule breaks into your caring routine. So, it might be that once a week, you make sure that the children have something to do after school, some sport or activity, and at the same time, maybe that your parents will go visit your brother or your sister, or your brother or sister might come to look after them. Also, think about me time. So think about how you're going to actually do things that you want to do. Now that ties into what we're saying. So you get somebody to look after the parents and the children, but a lot of us do that, and then we just so tired, what we do is just flop down and do nothing.
Right.
However, it's actually more useful to use that time to do something constructive, to rejuvenate yourself and to give yourself a sense of accomplishment that has to do with you and you alone, not the people you're looking after. something that seems obvious, look after your own health. Remember,
Yeah.
we're talking about people who might be in their 40s and 50s, might just be developing high blood pressure or diabetes. And you need to look after those health issues because, of course, if you don't, you're not going to be any good to anybody else.
And in terms,
And then finally,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
And then finally, be a little bit selfish. Find things that you want to achieve with your own life and find a way of carving out the time and energy to achieve those things. That might be a job. It might be your own personal relationships, your marriage, for example. It might be your hobbies. But make sure there is something in your life that is about you.
Because, and I'm glad that you said that in terms of taking care of yourselves, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And you don't want to end up in a state where your entire life is now consumed by this. And then what happens after? How do you move on after this? If your entire life is consumed with taking care of your parents, and then at some point they will pass on, but then you are going to have a life of your own to live. And then what happens now in terms of your family? If your family is destroyed because of that, now what are you going to do?
Yes.
So I'm glad that you touched on that.
Very important.
Yeah, I'm glad.
I think those things are very important.
Yeah, people need to definitely take that time and have their own goals and their own aspirations aside from just taking care of their parents. And in terms of it, the situation of, would you suggest taking care of your parents in your own home or putting your parents in an elderly home?
So I think that is a very personal choice, and there are pros and cons to both sides of that. If you are going to choose to put your parents in a home, it's really worth taking the time to figure out which home is best and which home is the best match for you and your parent. In addition, a lot of people have to decide when that threshold comes. My own experience is that my mother-in-law, as she got older, wanted to stay at home, and we wanted to facilitate that. And between my sister-in-law, my wife, and myself, we did everything we could to keep her at home. And then there came a time when she just wasn't able to look after herself enough to stay at home. And we had to make that very hard decision to put her in a home. Luckily, we got somewhere to stay where the young ladies looking after her really loved her, and where we had very easy access to her. So although she was in a home, we were able to share her life still. So those are some of the things we need to
I know that is definitely a tough decision for people to make in terms of putting your parents in a home for the aged, because they're not home with you anymore. And again, that guilt sometimes creeps in. And then there may also be the option for those who could afford it to bring an in-house caretaker that may come home and see about your parents, which could probably free up some of your personal time to get some of the things that you may need to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people see that as a black and white issue, but it's not. So you may be able to get a carer once a week or even once a fortnight, just to give you a little breathing space. It doesn't have to be, they have to be there 24/7. It could be just to give you a little break and redress the balance a little bit.
Yeah. So, Doc, we want to thank you very much once more for joining us again on the home front in terms of caring for the elderly. And I remember in the last episode, you spoke about making sure and taking care of your mind. So right now, we're going to toss it into our mindfulness minute.
Welcome to this mindful minute. Today we're going to do a mindful body scan. So just closing your eyes and just bringing your awareness to your feet. Noticing the sensation of your feet against the ground. And then slowly moving up from your feet to your legs. Maybe you notice the clothes against your skin, your body against the seat. Moving up into your torso, noticing your chest, your abdomen, your whole spine, sensing your arms, and sensing your neck and your head. So coming into the body so we can remember to be here now.
I don't know if you feel it or if it's just me, but after a mindfulness minute, I always feel a lot more relaxed. So now we're going to jump inside some of the questions that you all have submitted via video, and we are going to get them answered right here.
Hey Homefront, this is Alex from Tunapuna, and my question is this. If somebody tests positive for the COVID-19 virus and they quarantine for 21 days, do they have to get another COVID test with a negative response before they can return to work? Stay safe. Blessings.
Good morning, Alex from Tunapuna. Thanks so much for your question. If you have been in home isolation, haven't been confirmed as having COVID-19, then the Ministry of Health regulations do not stipulate the requirement for a negative PCR test. Their criteria consist of a minimum of 10 days after your first symptoms, plus 3 days where you do not display symptoms, plus an additional 7 days. But different companies may have different requirements, and perhaps your company requires you to have a negative PCR test before you can return to work. Thank you again for your question.
Thank you each and every one of you all for submitting those video questions. Keep those questions coming. Keep those selfie questions coming. Send those videos to the email address on your screen, and we are going to get them answered by a specialist. So we want to thank you all very much for joining us on another episode of Homefront, and we must thank those at PED CARES Foundation. So keep on donating to the PED CARES Foundation, because every donation is going towards the pediatric department right there. The entire pediatric hospital actually at Mount Hope. So keep on supporting the pediatric department. Keep on supporting the children. Remember, the PED CARES Foundation, they train the doctors, they train the nurses, they train the paramedics as well. They partner with schools locally and internationally and organizations as well. So we're going to make sure that our kids, the ones of the future, are going to be our future leaders with your help by donating to the PED CARES Foundation. Thank you all very much for joining us here on Homefront. See you guys tomorrow, same time, same place.